If you're someone who is interested in a career in law, particularly with regards to property law, conveyancing, or becoming an estate agent, or even if you are someone that just routinely looks through Rightmove, scrolls through, I'm sure we've all done that, you've probably come across the terms leasehold and freehold a few times. And you might be wondering, well, what do those terms actually mean? What's the practical difference? Now, of course, if you are someone who's already interested in law, someone who's done their research, you probably know the difference, but some of you may not. So what I'm going to do in this very, very short video is hopefully be able to explain the key difference between a freehold and a leasehold as simply as possible, and the potential problems with each of them, and also the benefits of each of them. Now, of course, the reality in the actual conveyancing industry is a lot more complicated, but hopefully this should give you the basics of what the real key difference and distinction is between both of them. So I've got a few books here. These are not any particular books. These are just ones that I found around the office. I'm just going to use them as tools, as props for this demonstration. So going to imagine that these books here represent the land. So of course we know what we mean by land. Land is the land that you stand on. Land is the land that you walk on, you drive on, that you have a property on. So that's the land. And these two books represent the property. So you've got the property, and the property is standing on the land. Now I've got to hold this one because actually it's not standing up by itself. And the difference between a freehold and a leasehold is who owns the land. So in a freehold property, like this one, just put this down for the moment, you own the property, you own the house, and you own the land that it is on. Now, this of course means that you have a stronger title to everything. And also in the conveyancing process, this becomes a lot easier because it's just one party selling to another. The seller owns the house, they own the land, and they are selling it to the buyer. The problem with a freehold, whilst it is much quicker and easier to sell, and it generally considered a more valuable title because the land, of course, particularly in the United Kingdom, very, very valuable, is that anything that happens on the land is your responsibility, not just the house. So if there is sinkage on your land, if an endangered species is found on your land, that becomes your responsibility to deal with. Now, on the other hand, you have a leasehold title. This is where you own the house, but you do not own the land. Someone else, the freeholder, owns the land, and you essentially lease your property on that land. Now, you can own the property outright, and this is more common in apartment buildings than it is in standard semi-detached or detached houses, but it does exist in those forms as well. And so anything that happens on the land is not your responsibility. You're responsible for your apartment, your property, but you are not responsible for the land. So it's the freeholder, the landowner, the landlord that has to deal with any sinkage of any endangered species on the land. And essentially you lease your property from the freeholder. And you've probably seen a 125-year lease, 999-year lease, and there's all sorts of things in the courts at the moment about changing it because leasehold is considered to be quite old-fashioned, etc. And they're trying to make it easier for leaseholders to extend their leases or to basically reduce their ground rent to nothing, a peppercorn rent, as they call it. Now, the problem with leaseholds is particularly when it comes to selling the property, or when it comes to doing anything to the property, because you then don't just get to choose what you do with it. You have to get permission from the landlord. And so again, if you imagine selling an apartment or an apartment building, etc., you have to go through conveyancing, but you have to go through the landlord and the freeholder as well. So it's not just a case of the seller sells their apartment to the buyer. The seller is selling the apartment, but they also have to get lots of information from the people that own the land. And that's why if you try to buy a leasehold property, probably go on a conveyancer's website and it says that for a leasehold it costs X times more. For a leasehold it costs, it takes X times the amount of time because you've got another party in the mix. But on the advantage for leaseholds is that because they're generally apartments and smaller properties, etc., and they're less valuable because you don't own the land, is they're great for first-time buyers. So that's why you often see leaseholds for smaller properties and for apartment buildings. Now, it's not to say that apartment owners can't own the land as well. Of course, if you're in a huge block of flats and you just own one flat, you're not going to have to or want the responsibility of the entire land the apartment block is on. So sometimes the apartment owners, as a collection, as a collective, own the land that it's on, and that's called a common hold, which is essentially a somewhat mix in between a leasehold and a freehold, where you own your apartment, but you and all the other apartment owners in the building own the land together. So, because that's quite an oversimplified, perhaps, way of explaining what a freehold and a leasehold is. The actual broken down, the land register title, everything goes into a lot more details. You can find all of that out on the government site, but hopefully that should, at a very, very high level, at least explain the key difference, key distinction between a freehold title and a leasehold title. And if you are interested in a career in law, you are interested in a career in conveyancing or as a estate agent, then a really great course for you to undertake is the Council of Licensed Conveyancers course in conveyancing. And there's 2 diplomas for that, the level 4 and the level 6. And once you've done the level 6, coupled with working with an estate agent or a conveyancing firm or in a land department within a law firm, you will become a licensed conveyancer. And that will allow you to work in that field. And it's far quicker, cheaper, and easier to qualify as a conveyancer through those means than it is through becoming a solicitor, when many solicitors end up working in conveyancing anyway. It's one of the biggest job opportunities there is for solicitors. So if you want to work in conveyancing, you want to go through the hassle of training contracts and the SQEs and the tens of thousands of pounds and the years and years and years it takes to qualify, then that might be a really quick, easy route for you to qualify. And we do offer those courses here at Astronti, so do check out our link in the bio and contact us if you want any more information. And you want any more information about the CLC courses. So thank you for watching. Hope you found that useful. And do contact us if you want any more information.